In the summer of 1965, in the Kingdom of Tonga, a country made up of a group of small islands in the ocean, located specifically east of Australia, there were 6 teenage boys aged between 13 and 16. All of them were students at a Catholic boarding school on the island of Tongatapu. As you know, boarding schools are not only for studying, students also live there. And as you know, this type of school has many restrictions imposed by teachers, and all the activities students do are related to the school. The school system was somewhat strict. Their names were Manu, Sione, Stephen, Kolo, David, and Luke. As mentioned earlier, these boys were feeling bored and pressured by the strict school system, harsh rules, and boring routine. They were only allowed to leave one day under the supervision of a teacher. This caused a feeling of suffocation and confinement among the boys. One day, while they were sitting during their lunch break, the oldest one, Sione, suggested an escape trip to a farther place, to the island of Fiji, which is also an island located in the same region of the Pacific Ocean and considered larger and more developed than the Kingdom of Tonga. They had heard that life there was better, whether for studying or working. However, the distance between the two islands was very large, and the boys had no experience of any kind, neither in navigation nor in sailing or even in traveling long distances. They had no clear plan. Of course, the boys did not have a boat, so they planned one evening to steal a small fishing boat from an old, grumpy fisherman at the harbor. This old man knew them, and they had had some problems with him before, so he was a suitable target because they would not feel much guilt if they took his boat. They decided to steal his boat. The boat was wooden, about 7 meters long, and not suitable for long trips. They decided to make their journey at night so that no one would discover them until morning. When night came and they made sure everyone was asleep, they slowly got out of their beds, exited through the school door, jumped over the fence, and escaped. When they reached the harbor, they found the old man's boat. They lifted the anchor, lowered the sail, and put their belongings in the boat. They took with them some simple supplies, a few bananas, some coconuts, 2 dried fish, a small knife. They also took a small gas stove to cook the fish they would catch. But the strange thing was that they didn't have a compass, a map, or any kind of navigation equipment. The distance between the island of Tonga and the island of Fiji is more than 750 kilometers, and even if they had brought navigation tools, this journey would have been almost impossible for young children who had never sailed in their lives. When they set sail, during their first hours at sea, the weather was relatively calm. After 2 hours of sailing, they were already very far from the island. As dawn approached, the boys became very sleepy, especially since they used to sleep very early at school and were not used to staying up late. Slowly, one by one, they fell asleep until all of them were asleep. The problem was that the sail was open, so the boat kept moving with no direction. As dawn approached, a strong storm hit. The wind intensified, the waves rose, and none of them woke up except to the sound of thunder, while heavy rain began to fall. The sail was torn, the oars broke, and the boat began to rock violently. The boys were terrified. They tried to remove the water from the boat, but the storm lasted for long hours until they almost thought it was the end. They were only clinging to the boat, waiting for the storm to end. After the storm, they were left without a sail or oars. The boat became nothing but a wreckage drifting with the current. They didn't know where the current was taking them, and there was no sign of land on the horizon. They spent 8 full days at sea without almost no food or water. The waves carried them left and right. The food they had ran out, and even their attempts to catch fish failed. They couldn't catch anything. Even the water had been gone for some time. They tried to collect rainwater and coconut shells and drink it. They made a drinking schedule where each person drank only small amounts, just drops. Some days no rain fell, so they couldn't drink anything. Of course, they ate what was left of the bananas and raw coconuts, but thirst was the greatest enemy. Their situation was extremely miserable, especially since, as mentioned, they had no experience at all with the sea or sailing. Around the 9th day, while they were desperate, one of them saw something on the horizon, a rocky island appearing in the distance. At first, they couldn't believe their eyes, but they were sure. Land. They were very weak, but they gathered the last of their strength and tried to push the boat towards it. They paddled towards the land. The waves didn't help, so they were forced to jump and swim in stages, holding onto wooden planks from the boat. Their final journey took 36 continuous hours of swimming and endurance until they managed to reach the island. They left the boat in the sea, unable to retrieve it. As soon as they reached land, they fell asleep on the shore from exhaustion. They didn't wake up until the sun rose the next day. From here began their long journey, which would last much longer than they expected. The island they reached was called Ata. This island has a dark history. It was once inhabited, but in 1863, slave traders attacked it and kidnapped its inhabitants to work in Peru. Literally, all of the island's residents, men, women, children, and even the elderly, were taken. Since then, the island was left abandoned and shunned. When the boys arrived, they found no one, only harsh nature, rocky cliffs, and dense forests. When they arrived, they were in a terrible condition, hungry, thirsty, and psychologically broken. They missed their families and friends, even the school they had escaped from. They were afraid they would never be able to leave this place. At the same time, the boys realized they had to adapt quickly to the situation, or they would perish. Using some wooden planks, they made spears to catch fish, but the problem was that they couldn't start a fire, so they had to eat the fish raw. The biggest problem was, of course, water. They couldn't find a source of clean water. When they climbed to higher ground, they caught seagulls and drank their blood, and also took eggs and drank them. It was very difficult, but for them, any food, no matter how dirty or unsuitable, was a great blessing.
Any food, anything to drink.
Any food, no matter how awful it is and how dirty it is, it's a very beautiful thing to have it in that time.
After regaining some of their energy, they explored the island and found an area that had belonged to the original inhabitants over 100 years ago. They found very useful items, knives, spears, clay pots, and even chickens, which was a very pleasant surprise for them and a huge gain they never expected. Now they had one goal: to light a fire. And indeed, after many attempts that took days, they finally succeeded in lighting a fire. Their joy was immense at this achievement. Because fire was so difficult to obtain, they decided to organize a schedule they called the fire-keeping schedule, where they would take turns tending the fire. Whoever was on duty would feed the fire and protect it from wind and rain to keep it alive. At night, they would hold hands and sing around the fire. Slowly, the fire became the center of their lives for cooking, warmth, and almost everything. The fire stayed lit for months. The boys were not helpless. They made use of everything around them. They took palm leaves and built huts for themselves. They also made a farm with beans and other crops and even banana trees. They didn't stop at basic needs either. They built a gym with weights and a bench, and even made a primitive guitar from wood, wires, and coconut shells. And they sang almost every night. Singing and prayer helped them maintain their morale. The boys quickly realized that if they did not organize themselves, they would die. So they decided to establish a simple system: one person in charge of food, one in charge of water, one in charge of animals, one in charge of the farm, and one who watched the sea. They divided all responsibilities. Despite all this, their psychological state was very difficult. Every day that passed, they thought they would never be rescued. If a problem arose between any two of them, they agreed that the two parties would separate for a while, each going to a different part of the island to calm down, then return to work. They refused to remain prisoners of the island. They tried several times to build wooden rafts to return to the sea, but each time the waves destroyed them. Perhaps it was better that they couldn't sail on those rafts, because surviving in the open sea would have been impossible. After failed attempts, they accepted that they had to wait for relief. All these tasks kept them busy and distracted from their reality, which was definitely in their favor. Months passed, the rainy season, then the dry season, heat and cold. They adapted to all conditions and seasons. They became like a small tribe living in a spirit of cooperation. Their desire to survive was so strong they didn't let circumstances affect them, even that there was no clear sign of hope that they would be rescued. They held on and motivated and protected each other. One day, specifically in September 1966, after 15 months, it was Stephen's turn to watch the sea.
On that day, he actually saw a ship near the island for the first time in more than a year. When he saw it, he ran quickly to the shore, shouting and waving at the ship. When the ship got closer, he jumped into the sea and swam towards it. At that moment, the captain panicked, took his rifle, and pointed it at Stephen. Stephen raised his hands and told him, "My name is Stephen, and I have 5 other boys with me. We've been stuck on this island for more than a year." The captain lowered his weapon and introduced himself. He was an Australian captain named Peter Warner. He was passing near the island with his ship and noticed smoke rising. He was a fisherman, and to his knowledge, this island was abandoned and uninhabited. When he approached and found Stephen, he understood everything. At that moment, Peter took their names and contacted the Coast Guard, who confirmed that these children had indeed been missing for more than a year, and everyone believed they were dead. Even their families had held funerals for them. This moment was emotional for Peter. He couldn't believe that he had saved these children and taken them out of this hell.
As for the boys, when they realized that this nightmare was coming to an end, there were no words to describe their joy at that moment. They had not felt this feeling for more than a year. As for the boys, when they realized that this nightmare was coming to an end, there were no words to describe their joy at that moment. They had not felt this feeling for more than a year. But the surprise was that their problems were not over yet. Do you remember the fisherman they stole the boat from? When he learned that they had returned, as soon as they arrived at the port, he informed the police to arrest them because he still had not forgiven them even after 15 months. He did not even allow them to catch their breath. They were arrested immediately upon reaching land. Captain Peter helped them a second time. Peter was the son of a very wealthy man in Australia and had connections with some Australian TV channels. He contacted one of them, called Channel 7, and offered them the story, suggesting they make a documentary film about it, a new, exciting, and exclusive story. The channel was interested in the story and sent reporters along with an advance payment. Peter took this advance and gave it to the fisherman to settle his rights, and the boys were released. From the moment they were released from jail, the channel began filming them. They took the boys to the island where their families were, since their families were not on the same island. The reporters documented the moment of their reunion with their families after all that time. These images are real from the moment they met their families. The news was shocking. Their families had held funerals for them, believing they were dead. When they returned, people welcomed them with tears and joy, mixed emotions that no one can truly describe. Of course, feasts and celebrations were held in honor of the boys' return. After a few days, the boys returned once again to the island of Atta to film scenes for the documentary and to tell the full story. After that, each of them lived a different life. Some worked with Captain Warner at sea, while others returned to their simple lives in Tonga. But Manu still works with Captain Peter on the same boat to this day, and they consider each other very close friends. Their story was not forgotten. In recent years, it inspired Dutch writer Rutger Bregman to write about it in his book, Humankind, A Hopeful History. Their story today is known as the Boys of Tongatapu. Unfortunately, some narratives portrayed the children in an unrealistic and savage way, such as the novel Lord of the Flies. But unlike that novel, which depicted children turning into monsters, this never happened in reality. They simply formed a connected community for more than a year and tried with all their effort to survive together. These boys proved that cooperation, order, and love are stronger than chaos. Finally, thank you so much guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the story. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Stay safe.